First on Radio 4, it's time for Any Questions with Victoria Derbyshire.
Hello and welcome to the BBC Radio Theatre at Broadcasting House here in central London. Let me introduce you to our panel this evening. Christine Jardine is the Liberal Democrat MP for Edinburgh West. She was elected in 2017 and is the party's spokesperson for the Cabinet Office, Women and Equalities and Scotland. A former journalist, she used to work for BBC Scotland and was editor of the Press Association in Scotland. Dominic Grieve is the former Attorney General, the top lawyer in the land under the coalition government led by David Cameron. He opposed Brexit and was the Conservative member for Beaconsfield until he fell out with the leadership, stood as an independent and lost his seat in 2019. Nick Thomas Symonds trained as a barrister and is the Shadow Secretary of State for International Trade. His biography of Harold Wilson has just been published. He represents the Torvine constituency where he was born and brought up and was in Cardiff for a service of prayer and reflection for the late Queen, which was attended by King Charles. Bronwyn Maddox is the CEO and director of the international affairs think tank Chatham House, which counted the late Queen Elizabeth as a patron. Bronwyn told The Washington Post this week, amongst other things, that we are moving to a point where Britain is less sure of its role in the world. London, please welcome your Any Questions panel. Let's move on to our next question, and it is from Gareth Kearns. Hi, Gareth.
Hi. Which is sacrosanct? Good manners or the right to protest?
We have two barristers on the panel, so that may be rather helpful. Nick Thomas Symonds.
Well, look, there's of course a right to protest that is a historic one in this country, but I really would question at the moment the timing of some of these protests and ask about showing respect to the people who are actually mourning at the moment. But looking more broadly at this, I was in Cardiff this week where there was something of a protest, but I think that the reality is this. I think the memory of this period for the country is going to be all about the memory of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, the wishing, the sending of good wishes to King Charles III. And I don't think, frankly, that the protests that have happened, which people are perfectly in their rights to do, unless, of course, they do step over a particular line and they are likely to cause harassment, alarm or distress for other people in those cases, then of course the law will intervene. But overall, whilst of course you have a right to protest, I think these days will not be remembered for that. They'll be remembered for our respect to Queen Elizabeth and our best wishes to King Charles.
A small number of people, as you know, this week have been arrested and charged with breach of the peace in connection with things like holding up a sign that said abolish the monarchy or heckling Prince Andrew. Dominic Grieve, good manners or the right to protest, which is sacrosanct?
The right to protest with good manners is sacrosanct. And the police have a difficult task because undoubtedly people have a right to protest, but to shout and interrupt a silent vigil is very bad manners. And it does raise the possibility of a breach of the peace because people will be upset by it. So a policeman intervening to stop that, hopefully the person will never actually be charged even if they're removed, is a piece of good policing because the duty of the police is to keep the peace, not to run around putting people in jail and having them charged. It's to intervene so as to prevent breaches of the peace. Now, I'm not going to comment on every single one of the incidents that have been, because I wasn't there. And it may be that on occasion the police get it wrong. I have known this to happen in my career as a barrister, and so has Nick. But at the end of the day, it is a delicate balance that needs to be struck. And I agree with Nick. At a time of national mourning, stridently asserting a view which is contrary when you're surrounded by people who are attempting to do something rather different is not good manners, and people should not do it. There are other places where they can do it perfectly well. But as I say, the right to protest with good manners is sacrosanct, and we must protect it even when we disagree with what people are saying. And that is fundamental to our parliamentary democracy. And I am quite confident that we will continue to uphold that principle.
Christine Jardine.
Oh, I think it's absolutely right that they are not mutually exclusive. They shouldn't be. And I don't think anyone would deny the right to protest peacefully in this country should be respected. But we are in a time where emotions were very sensitive. We are in a mourning as a nation, and it was a silent vigil in one case that was interrupted. So good manners would have dictated that, a protest at that time was not appropriate. And I think that's the key to it. Nobody is saying for a minute that the right to protest we shouldn't all have it and it shouldn't be sacrosanct. But at the same time, there is a time and a place. And when people are feeling very vulnerable, when they are grieving, when it is a moment of reflection and respect, to disrupt that is not acceptable. That's just not good manners. And like Dominic says, the police then have a job to make sure that the balance of the situation is not upset. Emotions are running high, there's tension, and it needs to be diffused. And I think that is what we have to remember at all times, that this is a delicate, painful situation for a lot of people, and we should respect that.
The chair of the Metropolitan Police Federation, Ken Marsh, said this week, "It was clear that some of my colleagues were not aware of what people can and can't do in terms of holding up pieces of paper. One that comes to mind is 'Not my king' and things like that." What do you think, Bronwyn Maddox?
I'm afraid I don't agree with the other three panellists on this. Good manners are admirable, desirable, enormously to be cherished and pursued. But the right to protest does matter, and some people don't agree with the monarchy. And the incidents we heard this week, I found very disturbing. One barrister holding up a blank piece of paper and a policeman challenging him in case he wrote something on it, which might be "Not my king," but it hadn't happened. And there were others, and so on. Yes, it would be upsetting to those in the crowd who are mourning, and people have been very, very touched to the heart by this, and it'd be desirable that people didn't do it. But I would come down on the right to protest. Ken Marsh did say that, with the indication that some police officers might, in the balance we're describing, not have been aware of actually what people are allowed to do. And I do think I didn't laugh when Dominic Greaves said, the right to protest with good manners is absolutely fine, but the right to protest with bad manners also should be protected. We've had in a summer with lots of distractions and political heat and all kinds of things, the police sentencing, the police crime sentencing and courts bill with a lot of constraints on how people can protest. We've got the public order bill going through Parliament now, again with the same, very much written from the point of view of those inconvenienced by protests rather than those protesting. And I think it's something we really have to be concerned about.
I think, Bronwyn, you may have slightly missed the point I was trying to make. I said the right to protest with good manners is sacrosanct. That doesn't mean to say that people don't have a right to protest with bad manners. And indeed, let's face it, many protests are done with bad manners and they need to be accommodated. But they shouldn't be sacrosanct, because if they're sacrosanct, it means they take complete priority over the people who may be mourning in silence. And that's my point. So you can identify what should be sacrosanct. The rest, in a democratic society, we have a lot of leeway. Indeed, I drafted some of the amendments to the crime sentencing and courts bill because I thought the bit about Parliament Square was completely dreadful. So I'm a firm believer in the right to noisy protest. But there is a time and place, and there will also be times when people say, I'm sorry, there are rights to the people who are doing something else as well. And those have to be balanced out. And that's the hardest thing of the lot.
OK. Thank you. Let's move on to our next question, and you may want to talk to Anita Anand on any answers. You can call her 03700 100 444. Lines are open from 12:30 Saturday lunchtime.
Brexit broke Britain.
We're going to leave that there because we're going to move on to our next question.
Radio 4, it's time for Any Answers. Here's Anita Anand.
Jane, thank you very much. Good afternoon. Welcome to Any Answers. Let's go to Liz Murray, who's calling us from Fife. Hi, Liz.
Hi there. Hello. I was actually responding to what Christine Jardine was saying.
Yeah.
First of all, she said Scotland only seems to have one voice at the moment. Now, as an older person, here's my voice. I do think we are all represented in our Parliament and, constitutionally. And I think it has come across that we do really, I'm surprised that I'm wanting independence, that I do. It's nothing to do with the monarchy. I have a great deal of respect for the monarchy, and most of us do. And that is really not, conflating these issues is not helpful. And somebody in the audience shouted out, Brexit has broken Britain, and I would totally agree with that. We didn't vote here for Brexit, but has totally, massively destroyed our economy. And Christine said, never mind the economy, never mind the coinage and all the rest. Well, we have to very much mind about these things. And we're getting on and trying to cope with these things. And Nicola Sturgeon has been going out of her way to try and sort this and sort the economy by visiting Scandinavian countries and so on, and trying to.
Yeah, I mean, the point was made. The point was made. And I forget who made it on the programme, Liz. I mean, it might have been Dominic Grieve. I can't remember. I may be getting that wrong. But somebody saying if you witnessed the scenes as the cortege went through Scotland, if you saw the kind of floral tributes that immediately sprung up in Balmoral, that it there is still a great deal of feeling for the monarchy in Scotland. And also, I mean, some may point to the fact that, this question has arisen before and Scotland did not vote to leave. So what do you make of that?
To leave what? Scotland didn't to leave in 2014? Yes, but that's what I'm saying. It's conflating things. It's nothing to do with the monarchy. Of course we respect the monarchy. Most of us do. But that's nothing to do. The fact that people think, that the Queen did a great job, it's nothing to do with that. Our independent, what I'm saying is, they're talking about, is this causing the fracture? And I'm saying to you, no, the guy who shouted out, Brexit has broken Britain, is correct. It's a governmental thing. It's nothing to do with the monarchy.
So